Welcome to Sleepy Stories from Ages Past. Tonight, we journey back to the year of our Lord 1150 A.D. We are traveling to the heart of a Benedictine abbey, nestled in a mist-heavy valley in northern France. Here, the world moves by the tolling of a bell and the steady breath of prayer. As the rest of the medieval world slumbers under the weight of toil, a small community of men prepares to wake. They are the engines of a silent, spiritual industry. Close your eyes now. Let the sounds of the modern world fade into the distance. Imagine the weight of heavy wool against your skin. We begin our journey with Brother Anselm in the deepest hour of the night. The bell. It is the signum, the copper voice of the abbey, vibrating through the heavy timbers of the dormitory. Brother Anselm stirs before the final echo has even touched the stone walls. His eyes open to a darkness so thick it feels like a physical weight upon his chest. For a moment, he is nowhere. He is a soul suspended in the void. Then, the familiar smells of his life return to ground him. There is the scent of old cold beeswax from the snuffed candles. There is the sharp mineral tang of limestone dust. And faintly clinging to the pads of his fingers, there is the smell of the scriptorium, the musk of dried calfskin parchment, and the metallic bite of iron gall ink. Anselm lies still for 3 heartbeats, as the rule of St. Benedict suggests. He offers his first thought of the day to the Creator. He does not rush. In the monastery, haste is a form of pride. He throws back the thin wool blanket. The air of the dortorium is sharp and biting, a reminder that the stone walls, while thick, do not hold the heat of the day. He sits up on his straw-filled pallet. All around him, he hears the soft rustle of 30 other men rising in unison. There is no speech. The great silence, which began at the setting of the sun the previous evening, still holds the abbey in its grip. It is a holy vacuum that no monk would dare to break with a casual word. He reaches for his habit, which lay folded at the foot of his bed. The wool is coarse and heavy, dyed a deep, earthy brown. He pulls the tunic over his head, feeling the familiar friction of the fabric against his skin. Next comes the scapular, a long piece of cloth that hangs over his shoulders, representing the yoke of Christ. Finally, he wraps the leather belt around his waist. He fumbles slightly in the dark with the buckle, his fingers stiff from the night chill. Every movement is practiced. Every gesture is a ritual. As he slides his feet into his leather boots, he hears the soft tread of the circator, the brother appointed to ensure no one has succumbed to the temptation of extra sleep. The circator carries a small, hooded lantern. A single beam of light dances across the floor, illuminating the dust motes that hang suspended in the air. Anselm stands. His joints creak, a quiet protest from a body that has spent 40 years in service to the rule. He joins the line of shadows moving toward the night stairs. These stairs lead directly from the dormitory down into the transept of the abbey church. As he walks, his hand brushes the cold, damp surface of the wall. The stone is a living record of the abbey's history. It is smooth in places where generations of monks have touched it, and rough where the mason's chisel marks still remain. The transition from the dormitory to the church is a transition between worlds. In the dormitory, they were men who slept and dreamed. On the stairs, they are transitionary beings. By the time they reach the choir stalls, they must be vessels for the divine. The air grows colder as they descend. It carries the scent of the valley mist that has seeped through the high, narrow windows. It is a smell of wet grass, river water, and the vast, sleeping forests that surround the abbey walls. They move into the choir. The only light comes from a few flickering oil lamps and the large candles placed near the lectern. The shadows of the great Romanesque arches stretch upward, disappearing into the vaulted ceiling. To Anselm, the church at 2 a.m. feels larger than it does at noon. The darkness expands the dimensions of the space, making it feel as though the roof has been removed and they are standing directly under the canopy of heaven. The monks take their places in the carved oak stalls. Each man stands in his assigned spot, according to the date of his entry into the order. Anselm finds his place, his hands resting on the smooth misericord seat that is currently folded up. He looks toward the altar. The gold of the crucifix catches a stray glint of candlelight, glowing with a soft inner fire. The silence here is different from the silence of the dormitory. It is expectant. It is a silence that waits for the first note of the office of Vigils. Anselm feels the presence of his brothers around him. He cannot see their faces clearly, but he knows their breathing. He knows the slight wheeze of Brother Bernard to his left, and the steady rock-like stillness of young Brother Thomas to his right. They are a single organism now. Saint Benedict wrote in the rule that idleness is the enemy of the soul. Therefore the monks must be occupied. At this hour their occupation is the work of God, the Opus Dei. As the abbot signals the start, the silence is finally broken. But it is not broken by human chatter. It is broken by the low, resonant chant of the opening versicle. "O Lord, open my lips," the abbot intones, "and my mouth shall declare your praise." The brothers respond in a unified swell of sound. The words are in Latin, a language that feels as solid and eternal as the stone foundations beneath their feet. The sound does not rise and fall like the music of the secular world. It flows. It is a river of plainchant that moves through the dark church, bouncing off the apses and swirling around the pillars. Anselm closes his eyes. He does not need a book to remember the Psalms. He has recited them thousands of times. They are written into his muscles and his bones. As he chants, the last remnants of sleep fall away. His mind begins to sharpen. He thinks of the farmers in the village 2 miles away, still deep in their beds. He thinks of the knights in their drafty keeps and the king in his distant palace. The world is a place of chaos, of planting and harvesting, of taxes and wars. But here in the first watch, there is total order. The monastery is the clock of the world. It is the spiritual lighthouse that keeps the darkness of the soul at bay while the sun is hidden. He feels a deep sense of peace in this structure. There are no choices to be made. There is no uncertainty. The horarium, the monastic schedule, dictates every breath. The bells tell him when to pray, when to read, when to work, and when to eat. To the modern ear, this might sound like a cage. To Anselm, it is a liberation. By surrendering his will to the rule, he has found a quiet center that nothing in the outside world can touch. The service of Vigils is long. They will recite 12 psalms and several readings. Anselm feels the cold seeping through his boots, but he does not shift his weight. He offers the discomfort as a small sacrifice. He focuses on the rhythm of the words. Beatus vir qui non habit in concilio impiorum. Blessed is the man who hath not walked in the counsel of the ungodly. Between the psalms there are moments of profound stillness. In these gaps, Anselm can hear the building itself. The wood of the stalls settles with a faint clack. The wind moans softly against the high clerestory windows. A single drop of condensation falls from a damp archway, hitting the floor with a rhythmic ping. These are the heartbeats of the abbey. As the first hour of prayer draws to a close, the monks prepare for the transition to lauds, the office of the dawn. The world outside is still dark, but the spiritual day has begun. Anselm feels his spirit expanding. He is no longer just a man in a brown robe. He is a part of a lineage that stretches back to the deserts of Egypt and the mountains of Italy. He is a guardian of the night. He stands tall in his stall, his voice joining the others as they begin the Te Deum. The smoke from the snuffed candles drifts upward, and for a moment Anselm feels as though he could drift with it, rising above the stone and the mist toward the eternal light that they all seek in the silence of the night. The echoes of the opening versicle die away, swallowed by the vast, dark heights of the abbey roof. Now the true work of the night begins. The monks move into the steady, rolling rhythm of the psalms. This is the heart of the night office, a time when the boundaries between the physical world and the spiritual world begin to blur. For Brother Anselm, the chanting is not a performance. It is a breathing exercise. It is a collective pulse. The voices of the monks rise in a single monophonic line of sound, known as plainchant. There are no harmonies to distract the mind. There is only the pure, naked melody, rising and falling like the swell of a calm sea. Anselm feels the vibration of the chant in his own chest. It is a deep resonance that seems to hum within his very bones. In the Rule of Saint Benedict, chapter 19, it is written that the monks should stand to sing in such a way that our mind may be in harmony with our voice. Anselm strives for this harmony. He pushes away the lingering fragments of his dreams. He pushes away the thoughts of the leaking roof in the granary, or the sore on the heel of his left foot. He focuses entirely on the Latin words. Each syllable is a stone. Each sentence is a layer of masonry. Together, they are building a cathedral of sound to house the presence of God. The church is a cavern of shifting shadows. The small oil lamps casting yellow light onto the vellum pages of the great choir books do little to pierce the gloom. These books are massive, their leather covers reinforced with brass bosses. They sit upon heavy wooden lecterns, the musical notation large square neumes, visible only to those standing closest. But Anselm does not need to see the notes. He knows the tones of the 8 modes by heart. He knows when the melody will lift into a brief, soaring melisma, and when it will settle back into the grounding recitation tone. As the night office progresses, a strange psychological state descends upon the choir. It is the state of the watchman. In the secular world, the night is a time of danger or of wasted hours. Here, the night is a field of labor. Anselm looks at the shadows dancing on the capitals of the pillars. He sees the carved faces of lions, foliage, and biblical figures looking down from the stone. In the flicker of the candlelight, these stone faces seem to move. They seem to breathe with the monks. Anselm feels as though he is standing at the center of the universe. He is part of the great chain of being, connecting the worms in the earth to the angels in the highest firmament. The cold is a constant companion. It creeps up through the soles of his boots. It settles in the small of his back. He remembers the words of Peter the Venerable, who spoke of the bitter winters where the ink froze in the horns of the scribes. Anselm does not complain. The cold is a whetstone. It keeps the spirit sharp. It prevents the acedia, the spiritual sloth that can tempt a man when his body is too comfortable. To stay awake and alert in the freezing dark is a victory of the will. It is a proof of devotion. Occasionally, the abbot signals for the community to sit. This is the only time the misericords are used. These are small wooden ledges carved onto the underside of the folding seats. When the seat is tucked up, the ledge provides a tiny bit of support for the monk to lean against while appearing to stand. It is a mercy for the elderly and the infirm. Anselm leans back slightly, feeling the carved wood press against him. He watches the hebdomadary, the monk designated for the week's special duties, move to the center of the choir to read a lesson. The voice of the reader is a solo thread in the silence. He reads from the commentaries of St. Augustine. The Latin is dense and intellectual, but the rhythm of the delivery is steady and calming. Anselm listens, letting the theology wash over him. He does not try to analyze every point of doctrine. Instead, he lets the familiarity of the words settle his soul. The monastery is an engine of memory. By repeating these texts every year, every month, every day, the monks ensure that the wisdom of the past is never lost. They are the living libraries of Europe. They are the custodians of a civilization that exists mostly in their minds and their books. The psychological weight of the night office is heavy. It is a time of intense introspection. In the dark, a man's sins and failures feel larger. Anselm thinks of a moment of pride he felt the previous day when he successfully repaired a difficult page of a manuscript. He thinks of a flash of irritation he felt toward a novice who dropped a bucket in the cloister. In the presence of the chant, these ego-driven moments seem small and hollow. The music strips the man down to his essence. It reminds him that he is a conversio, one who is constantly turning toward a better way of living. Outside, the first hint of a change begins to occur, though no light yet enters the church. The air seems to shift. The deep, heavy silence of the midnight hours gives way to the slightly more active silence of the pre-dawn. This is the time of lauds, the office of praise. The mood of the music shifts. The psalms become more joyful. The language turns toward light and the coming of the sun. Benedicite omnia opera Domini, Domino. All the works of the Lord, bless the Lord. Anselm feels a second wind. The physical exhaustion of waking at 2 in the morning is replaced by a quiet, steady energy. The community moves with more fluidity now. They bow in unison at the Gloria Patri, their hoods falling forward to hide their faces, then rising again like a wave. The symmetry of the movement is beautiful in its simplicity. It is a dance of shadows and wool. There is a profound sense of safety within these walls. Beyond the abbey gates, the world is a place of uncertainty. Crops can fail. Bandits can strike. Law is often whatever the strongest man says it is. But inside the abbey, the law is the rule. The rule is older than the local lords. It is more stable than the shifting borders of France and England. As Anselm sings the final prayers of the night office, he feels the immense strength of the institution. He is a small part of a machine that has been running for centuries and will continue for centuries more. The last Amen is whispered rather than sung. The candles are extinguished one by the sacristan. The smoke rises in thin silver ribbons toward the rafters. The monks do not leave immediately. There is a period of interval, a time for private prayer or quiet reading in the cloister, as the sky begins to turn from black to a deep, bruised purple. Anselm remains in his stall for a moment longer. The silence rushes back in, filling the spaces where the music had been. It is a full silence. It is a silence that has been sanctified by the words that came before it. He stands, his body stiff but his mind clear, and prepares to move from the celestial work of the church to the earthly silence of the cloister. The night watch is over. The day is beginning to breathe. The gray light of morning begins to filter through the high, narrow windows of the cloister. It is a soft, tentative light that does not so much illuminate the stone as it does reveal its textures. The dampness of the night still clings to the columns of the arcade. Brother Anselm walks with a measured pace along the covered walkway. The stone floor is worn smooth in the center of the path, a testament to centuries of silent footsteps. This is the hour of the Summa Quis, the great silence. Though the sun is rising, the world of the abbey remains hushed. In the secular world, silence is often a sign of tension or a lack of things to say. In the abbey, silence is a discipline. It is a vessel. Chapter 6 of the Rule of Saint Benedict reminds the brothers that death and life are in the power of the tongue. To speak is to risk the sin of pride, of gossip, or of idle curiosity. To remain silent is to keep the heart open to the internal whisper of the divine. Anselm finds that after many years, the silence no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a protective cloak. It creates a space where a man can truly hear his own soul. However, a community of dozens of men cannot function in a total vacuum of communication. The abbey is a complex machine. It requires coordination. To manage this, the monks have developed a sophisticated language of the hands. As Anselm walks toward the scriptorium, he passes the cellarer and a young novice. The novice needs instructions regarding the morning's supply of ale. He does not open his mouth. Instead, he makes a circular motion with his thumb and forefinger, then mimes the act of drinking from a bowl. The cellarer nods. He points toward the buttery with a sharp, precise gesture of his hand, then taps his own forehead to signify, "Remember." Anselm watches this exchange with a quiet appreciation. There is a strange, rhythmic beauty to this manual speech. It is efficient. It lacks the messy emotions and hidden barbs that often accompany spoken words. When a monk wishes to ask for a book, he rubs his hands together as if smoothing a piece of parchment. If he requires a specific text, such as a psalter, he places his hands over his head in the shape of a crown to signify King David. If he needs to mention a fish during the midday meal, he moves his hand like a tail through the water. These signs are codified in the consuetudinaries, the customary laws of the house. They are as much a part of a monk's education as the Latin Psalms. The silence also heightens the other senses. Because he does not speak, Anselm hears the world with startling clarity. He hears the rhythmic scritch-scratch of a broom in the distance. He hears the distant lowing of the abbey's oxen in the fields beyond the walls. He hears the fluttering of a sparrow's wings as it darts between the rafters of the cloister roof. The world feels more vivid when it is not filtered through the noise of human conversation. Every sound becomes a prayer. Every movement becomes a deliberate act of service. As the community moves toward the center of the cloister, the presence of the abbot becomes the focal point. The abbot is the father of the house. He is the vicar of Christ within the walls of the abbey. Anselm sees him standing near the fountain, watching the brothers go about their duties. The abbot does not need to shout to exert his authority. His presence is enough. He embodies the rule. When he moves, the monks bow their heads slightly in respect. It is a gesture of filial love, not of fear. The abbot carries the weight of every soul in the monastery. He must be firm enough to maintain the discipline of the rule, yet compassionate enough to care for the weakness of the brothers. The silence of the morning is also the time for Lectio Divina, the divine reading. Anselm finds a stone bench in a patch of pale sunlight. He opens a small, portable volume of the Gospels. He does not read for information. He does not read to finish the book. He reads to ruminate. He takes a single sentence and lets it sit in his mind. He repeats it silently. He chews on the words as a cow chews its cud, extracting every drop of spiritual nourishment. This slow, meditative reading is only possible because of the surrounding quiet. If the cloister were filled with the chatter of men, the words of the text would remain on the surface of the page. In the silence, they sink into the heart. The community functions as a single body. In the silence, individual egos begin to dissolve. Anselm does not think of himself as an artist or a scholar. He is a limb of the monastery. When he sees a brother struggling with a heavy load of firewood, he does not ask if help is needed. He simply steps in and takes a share of the weight. No words are exchanged. A nod of the head is the only thank you required. This is the labor of obedience that Saint Benedict praised. It is a form of social engineering that turns a group of disparate men into a unified, productive force. The abbey is a high-functioning economic engine precisely because of this order. Without the distractions of the outside world, the monks can focus entirely on the task at hand. Whether it is grinding pigments in the scriptorium or weeding the herb garden, the work is done with a singular intensity. The silence acts as a catalyst for excellence. There is no good enough in the service of God. Everything must be done to the highest standard, for the work is an offering. As the sun climbs higher, the shadows in the cloister grow shorter and more defined. The cold of the night is being replaced by a gentle warmth. Anselm closes his book. He feels the stillness within him, mirroring the stillness of the stone. He looks at his brothers, all engaged in their silent tasks. He feels a deep, wordless connection to them. They are all travelers on the same road, bound by the same vows, moving toward the same distant goal. The bell rings again, signaling the transition to the chapter house. The great silence of the night and early morning is beginning to lift, but the spirit of silence will remain. Even when the monks are permitted to speak for administrative reasons, they will do so with gravitas, with weight and purpose. They will not use 10 words where 5 will do. Anselm stands and smooths the front of his habit. He joins the line of monks moving toward the heavy oak doors of the chapter house. The day is moving forward, the gears of the abbey turning with a steady, relentless grace. He walks in peace, his tongue still, his mind quiet, and his heart ready for the daily administration of the soul. The community moves as a single dark tide. They pass through the ornate portal of the chapter house. This room is the heart of the abbey's governance. It is a space where the spiritual and the temporal meet. The architecture here is grander than the cells of the dormitory, but more intimate than the soaring heights of the church. Stone benches line the walls in a continuous circuit. This arrangement ensures that every brother can see the face of every other brother. There are no corners in which to hide. There is no hierarchy in the seating, save for the abbot's throne at the eastern end. Anselm takes his place. He feels the cold of the stone through his habit. He rests his hands on his knees. He keeps his gaze lowered as the rule commands. The room smells of floor rushes and the faint, sweet scent of the garden drifting through the open windows. To the outside world, this might look like a courtroom. To Anselm, it is the place where the community's soul is polished. The session begins with the reading of the Martyrology. A young novice stands at the lectern. His voice is high and clear. He recites the names of the saints whose feasts are celebrated this day. He reads the names of the brothers who have died in years past. It is a moment of profound continuity. Anselm listens to the names of men he once knew. He hears the names of men who lived centuries before he was born. In this room, time is a circle. The dead are still part of the community. They are the silent witnesses to the present. Then comes the centerpiece of the meeting. A monk steps forward and reads a chapter from the Rule of Saint Benedict. This is why the room is called the chapter house. The rule is the constitution of their lives. Today they read chapter 3, on calling the brothers to council. The words are familiar, yet they carry a weight that never diminishes. The reader intones the Latin slowly. As often as anything important is to be done in the monastery, the abbot shall call the whole community together, and himself explain what the business is. Anselm reflects on this. The abbey is not a tyranny. It is a sophisticated, democratic body. When the abbey wishes to buy new land, or when a new novice seeks to take his final vows, the abbot asks for the counsel of the brothers. He even asks the youngest. Saint Benedict believed that the Lord often reveals what is best to the least among them. Anselm watches the abbot now. The abbot sits with his head slightly bowed. He is the shepherd, but he is also a brother. He listens as the cellarer stands to report on the state of the grain stores. The discussion is pragmatic. They talk of the mill on the river that needs a new stone. They talk of the salt rights in the neighboring marsh. There is no shouting. There is no posturing. The monks speak with a brevity that comes from years of silence. Each man offers his wisdom, then sits. The abbot weighs the words. He looks for the pars sanior, the wiser part of the community. He seeks a consensus that serves the common good. This is the engine of the abbey's prosperity. It is a collective intelligence focused on a single goal, the survival and sanctity of the house. After the business of the earth comes the business of the spirit. This is the chapter of faults. It is a moment that an outsider might find harsh, but Anselm finds it cleansing. It is a ritual of public accountability. One by one, brothers may stand to confess their minor infractions against the rule. Anselm watches a brother stand. The monk bows deeply toward the abbot. "I confess my fault," the brother says softly. "I broke a ceramic pitcher in the refectory through my own negligence." The abbot listens with a face of calm compassion. There is no anger in his eyes. He assigns a small penance, perhaps the recitation of an extra psalm or a period of extra labor. Then another brother may stand to claim, a brother he has seen failing. This is not done out of malice. It is done out of love. To leave a brother in his error is to fail him. To bring the error into the light is to allow it to be healed. Anselm remembers a time he was claimed for being late to the night office. He had felt the sting of shame, yes, but he had also felt the immense relief of being corrected. In the abbey, there are no secrets to rot the soul. Everything is brought to the chapter floor. Everything is washed clean by the community's shared commitment to perfection. The air in the chapter house grows warmer as the sun rises higher. The dust motes dance in the shafts of light. Anselm feels a sense of profound order. Beyond the walls of the abbey, justice is often a matter of the sword or the heavy hand of a lord. Here, justice is a matter of the rule. It is predictable. It is fair. It is grounded in the belief that every man is a work in progress. The meeting draws to a close. The abbot stands. He raises his hand in a silent blessing. The brothers rise in unison, the sound of their habits brushing the stone like the rustle of dry leaves. The administration of the soul is complete for the day. The administrative gears of the monastery have been greased with prayer and honest speech. As they file out of the chapter house, the atmosphere shifts. The morning's introspective work is done. Now the energy of the monastery turns outward. It is time for the labora, the manual and intellectual work that sustains their physical existence. Anselm feels a familiar stir of anticipation. He is a scribe. His workplace is the scriptorium, the room of light and ink. He walks back through the cloister, his mind already turning toward the vellum. He thinks of the pigments he must grind. He thinks of the lines he must rule. The chapter house falls silent behind them. The stone benches remain, waiting for tomorrow's meeting. The secrets confessed there remain within the walls, absorbed into the limestone. Anselm walks with a lighter step. He has seen the machinery of his world checked and balanced. He has been reminded that he belongs to something much larger than himself. He is a thread in a tapestry. He is a stone in a wall. He is a monk of the rule, and the day is now calling him to the labor of his hands. He moves toward the scriptorium, the smell of the library already calling to him from the upper floor. The stairs to the scriptorium are narrow and steep. They wind upward within the thickness of the stone wall. As Brother Anselm climbs, the air begins to change. It loses the damp, earthy scent of the cloister. It becomes dry. It smells of old leather, dried animal skins, and the sharp, vinegar-like tang of fermenting ink. He reaches the top and enters the large, rectangular room. This is the abbey's intellectual workshop. It is a place of light. Unlike the church, which guards its shadows, the scriptorium is designed to catch every possible ray of the sun. Large, clear windows line the southern wall. The glass is not stained here. It is plain and functional. It allows the natural light to pour over the slanted wooden desks. Anselm moves to his assigned place. Each monk has his own carrel, a small, partitioned desk that offers a measure of privacy. He does not begin writing immediately. First, there is the ritual of preparation. He settles onto his wooden stool. He feels the familiar ache in his lower back. It is a permanent guest in his body now. He arranges his tools with a jeweler's precision. He lays out his scrapers, his pumice stone, and his rulers. He checks his inkhorns, which are set into holes in the desk to prevent spilling. One horn holds the deep, black iron gall ink. The other holds a brilliant vermilion made from ground cinnabar. He reaches for his quill. It is a primary wing feather from a large goose, plucked in the spring. He takes a small, sharp knife, his scalprum, and begins to trim the nib. This is a delicate task. The slit must be perfectly centered. The tip must be angled just so. If the nib is too broad, the letters will be clumsy. If it is too sharp, it will scratch and snag on the vellum. Anselm works slowly. He tests the quill on a scrap piece of skin. He listens for the sound. A good quill should glide with a soft, rhythmic hiss. Before him lies a sheet of vellum. It is made from the skin of a young calf, treated with lime and stretched until it is as thin as a leaf. He runs his hand over the surface. One side is the hair side, slightly darker and more textured. The other is the flesh side, pale and smooth. He must be careful with his touch. The oils from his skin can ruin the surface. He takes a piece of pumice and lightly rubs the vellum to ensure the ink will bite. Then he begins the ruling. He uses a lead plummet to draw faint, horizontal lines across the page. He also marks the margins with small pinpricks. Everything must be symmetrical. Everything must reflect the order of the heavens. Anselm is currently working on a copy of the City of God by St. Augustine. It is a commission for a bishop in a distant cathedral. This book will outlive Anselm by centuries. It is a terrifying and beautiful thought. Every stroke of his pen is a permanent mark on history. He dips his quill into the black ink. He wipes the excess on the rim of the horn. He leans forward, his chest almost touching the edge of the desk. He begins to write. The script is a steady, upright proto-Gothic. It requires a firm hand and a quiet mind. He forms the letters with a slow, deliberate motion. As he writes, he whispers the words to himself. This is a form of prayer. He is not merely copying information. He is meditating on the text. He is breathing the word of God onto the page. The silence of the room is broken only by the collective scratching of a dozen quills and the occasional rustle of a turning page. It is the sound of a silent industry. The physical toll of the scriptorium is immense. After an hour, Anselm's neck begins to stiffen. His eyes strain from the glare of the white vellum. His 3 fingers, The thumb, the index, and the middle begin to cramp around the quill. There is an old saying among the scribes, 3 fingers write, but the whole body labors. It is true. To maintain the consistency of the script, he must hold his entire body in a state of controlled tension. He cannot fidget. He cannot rush. If he makes a mistake, he must carefully scrape the ink away with his knife, taking care not to puncture the delicate skin. He pauses to look at his work. The black ink is wet and glossy against the cream-colored vellum. It looks like a row of small, dark soldiers standing at attention. He switches to the red ink to create a rubric, a heading that guides the reader. The red is vibrant. It brings the page to life. Later, the illuminator will come to add gold leaf and intricate borders of vines and mythical beasts. But for now, the beauty lies in the geometry of the letters. Anselm looks out the window for a moment. He sees the shadow of the abbey church lengthening across the courtyard. He thinks of the pigments he ground yesterday. He thinks of the lapis lazuli brought from the distant east, which produces a blue so deep it looks like the night sky. He thinks of the saffron and the malachite. These materials are expensive. They represent the wealth and the reach of the monastery. The abbey is not just a place of prayer. It is a center of technology and art. They are creating objects of immense value, both spiritual and material. A single finished book can cost as much as a small farm. As he returns to his task, he feels a sense of deep satisfaction. In the scriptorium, he is a bridge. He is a bridge between the ancient authors and the future readers. He is a bridge between the raw animal skin and the finished vessel of wisdom. He remembers the words of a former master. To write is to sow the seeds of the Spirit. Every page he completes is a field planted. Every book is a harvest. The light in the room begins to shift. It turns from a bright cold white to a warmer golden hue. The dust motes dance in the air above the desks. Anselm's hand remains steady. He is tired, but he is at peace. The labor of the hands has stilled the turbulence of the mind. He finishes the final line of the page and sets the quill down. He will let the ink dry thoroughly before he turns the leaf. He stretches his arms, feeling the bones of his shoulders pop. Below in the courtyard, he hears the distant sound of the garden gate creaking open. He knows the schedule of the house. Soon it will be time to leave the dry world of ink and parchment for the damp green world of the herbs and the sick. The transition is seamless. One form of service ends and another begins. He gathers his tools. He covers his inkhorns. He leaves the scriptorium in silence, the afternoon sun warming his back as he descends the stairs toward the infirmary garden. The transition from the scriptorium to the garden is a journey from the intellect to the senses. As Brother Anselm pushes open the heavy oak door leading to the infirmary cloister, the dry air of the library is replaced by a sudden, cooling humidity. The scent of the garden hits him like a physical wave. It is a complex, layered perfume. It begins with a high, sharp note of crushed mint and the citrus tang of lemon balm. Beneath it lies the heavy floral sweetness of lavender and the medicinal, bitter depth of wormwood. This is the hortus conclusus, the enclosed garden, where the abbey's medical knowledge is rooted in the soil. Anselm walks slowly along the pebble-strewn paths. The garden is a masterpiece of functional geometry. It is divided into neat, rectangular beds by low stone borders. Each bed contains a specific family of simples, herbs used for their singular healing properties. Here, the monastery functions as a center of scientific inquiry. The monks are the keepers of the ancient lore of Galen and Dioscorides, blended with the practical folk wisdom of the local countryside. Anselm stops by a bed of tall, purple-flowered hyssop. He reaches out and brushes the leaves, releasing a scent that is both clean and resinous. In chapter 36 of the Rule, Saint Benedict writes with profound clarity, "Before all things and above all things, care must be taken of the sick, so that they may be served in very deed as Christ himself." This is the theological engine of the infirmary. The sick are not a burden. They are the living presence of the divine within the walls. Anselm moves toward the infirmary building itself, a long hall with large windows designed to let in the good air and the afternoon sun. He carries with him a small bundle of dried agrimony from the stores, needed for a brother suffering from a congestion of the lungs. Inside the infirmary, the atmosphere is one of hushed, professional calm. The floors are scrubbed with vinegar to keep the miasma at bay. The beds are lined with clean linen, a luxury rarely found in the world outside. Brother Sylvester, the infirmerer, is busy at a large wooden table. He is grinding dried poppy seeds in a stone mortar. The rhythmic thump-swish of the pestle provides a steady backbeat to the quiet groans of a feverish novice in the corner. Sylvester nods to Anselm. No words are needed. Anselm sets the herbs down and begins the process of preparing a decoction. He fills a copper pot with spring water and places it over a small, controlled fire in the hearth. He watches as the water begins to simmer. He adds the herbs, watching the clear liquid turn a deep, murky amber. This is a form of alchemy. He is extracting the hidden virtues from the plant, turning the bounty of the earth into a remedy for the flesh. The technical artistry here is as precise as the ruling of vellum. Too much heat will destroy the virtue of the herb. Too little will fail to release it. Anselm stirs the pot with a wooden spoon, his eyes fixed on the changing color of the brew. The infirmary is also the place where the abbey meets the world. While the monks live in seclusion, the gates of the infirmary are often open to the traveler, the pilgrim, and the local poor. The monastery acts as the regional hospital. A knight wounded in a tournament, or a peasant crushed by a falling timber might find themselves here, lying in a bed next to a monk who has spent 50 years in the cloister. In this space, the rigid social hierarchies of the 12th century soften. Pain and the need for healing are the great equalizers. Anselm assists Sylvester in applying a poultice of mustard and honey to the chest of the sick novice. The young man's skin is hot to the touch, and his breath comes in ragged, shallow gasps. Anselm speaks to him in a low, soothing tone, reciting the 7 penitential psalms in a whisper. The prayer is not just for the soul, it is meant to regulate the patient's breathing, to bring his heart into alignment with the steady pace of the liturgy. The monk-physician understands that the body and the spirit are not separate entities. To heal one, you must address the other. As the decoction finishes, Anselm strains the liquid through a fine linen cloth. He pours it into a ceramic cup, the steam carrying the earthy scent of the agrimony into the rafters. He feels a quiet pride in this work. In the scriptorium, he preserves the word. In the garden and infirmary, he preserves the breath. Both are essential to the work of God. The monastery is a self-sufficient ecosystem, a closed loop where the grain from the fields feeds the body, the books from the scriptorium feed the mind, and the herbs from the garden repair the damage of time and toil. He stays in the infirmary for a while longer, helping to change the straw in a pallet and checking the supply of ointment of roses used for skin irritations. The sunlight is beginning to tilt, casting long golden fingers across the infirmary floor. The dust motes here seem to move more slowly than they do in the scriptorium. There is a sense of stasis in this room, a pause in the relentless schedule of the day. It is a place where the community stops to acknowledge its own fragility. Outside, the birds are loud in the orchard. The bees are making their final rounds of the lavender beds, their low hum a constant grounding drone. Anselm steps back into the garden. He takes a deep breath of the cooling air. The work of the healer is tiring, but it offers a different kind of fulfillment than the work of the scribe. It is visceral. It is immediate. He looks at his hands, stained with the green juices of the plants and the yellow of the honey. He wipes them on a damp cloth, feeling the grit of the earth under his fingernails. The bell for the midday meal, the prandium, begins to toll. It is a bright, clear sound that cuts through the heavy scent of the garden. The labora of the morning is concluding. The monks will soon gather to nourish their bodies, just as they have nourished their souls in the church and their minds in the scriptorium. Anselm walks toward the refectory, leaving the quiet sanctuary of the sick. He moves with the steady, unhurried gait of a man who knows exactly where he belongs. The garden will continue to grow in the sun, and the infirmary will continue its quiet vigil. But for now, the community is called to the table. The hunger of a monk is a quiet, disciplined thing. It is not the ravenous craving of the hunter or the gluttonous anticipation of the merchant. It is a physical reality, acknowledged and managed by the rule. As Brother Anselm approaches the refectory, he joins a silent procession of brothers. They pause at the lavabo, a long stone trough outside the dining hall doors. Here, the ritual of washing is performed with practiced grace. The water is cold and clear, piped in from the abbey's mountain spring. Anselm dips his hands, feeling the green stains of the infirmary garden dissolve and swirl away. He dries his hands on a shared linen towel, feeling the rough texture of the fabric. Cleanliness is not merely for the body, it is a preparation for the communal act of the meal. The refectory is a hall of grand proportions, designed to dwarf the individual. High, timbered ceilings trap the warmth of the sun, and the walls are lime-washed to a brilliant, clean white. Long wooden tables are arranged in a U-shape, allowing the monks to face inward toward the center of the room. Anselm takes his place. He stands behind his bench, his head bowed, his hands tucked into the opposite sleeves of his habit. There is no clatter of plates or scraping of chairs. The room is a vacuum of sound until the abbot enters and strikes a small wooden mallet against the table. "Bless the Lord," the abbot intones. "The Lord be blessed," the brothers respond. They sit in unison. The sound of 30 men sitting on wooden benches is a single sharp thud. Before them lies the midday portion. It is a humble spread, yet it represents the sophisticated agricultural output of the abbey lands. There is a wooden bowl of pottage, a thick, hearty stew made of oats, leeks, and dried peas. Next to it sits a small loaf of coarse brown bread, baked in the abbey's own ovens. There is a portion of salted herring, a gift from the river, or perhaps traded for in the local market. And finally, there is a measurement of ale brewed in the monastery's vats to be safe and nourishing. Saint Benedict warned that the table of the brothers should never be without reading. As the first spoons dip into the pottage, a monk ascends the pulpitum, a small stone balcony built into the wall of the refectory. He opens a heavy volume of the lives of the Desert Fathers. His voice is steady and rhythmic, filling the hall with the stories of ancient ascetics. For Anselm, this is the most important part of the meal. The ears are fed while the stomach is satisfied. The reading prevents the monks from focusing too much on the pleasure of the food. It reminds them that they eat to live, rather than living to eat. Anselm breaks his bread. It is dense and has a sour, fermented tang that he has grown to love over the decades. He dips a piece into the pottage. The warmth of the stew spreads through his chest, easing the chill that always seems to linger in his bones after a morning in the scriptorium. He eats slowly. He is mindful of every chew, every swallow. In the silence, the flavors are magnified. The sweetness of a cooked leek, the saltiness of the fish, the bitterness of the ale, they are all reminders of the earth's providence. The logistics of the meal are handled by the kitcheners and the servers. These brothers move with ghost-like efficiency. If a monk needs more water or another slice of bread, he does not call out. He uses the signs he learned as a novice. He holds up a finger for bread. He makes the sign of the cross over his cup for wine or ale. The server nods and fulfills the request without a word. This creates a sense of total immersion. There is no social pressure to perform, no need for small talk or the navigation of ego. There is only the text being read from the balcony and the communal experience of the bread. The diet is largely vegetarian, as the rule forbids the meat of four-footed animals except for the very sick. This is not out of a modern sense of animal rights, but as a form of ascesis, the training of the will. By denying the body the heavy, heating proteins of beef or pork, the monks believe they keep the spirit light and ready for prayer. The pottage is the foundation of their strength. It is the fuel that allows them to rise at 2 a.m. and work in the fields until dusk. Anselm looks down the table at his brothers. Their faces are calm, illuminated by the light streaming through the high windows. He sees the young novice, struggling to stay focused on the reading. He sees the elderly Brother Martin, who can no longer chew the crust of the bread and must soak it in his ale. They are a family, but a family bound by a shared vow rather than blood. The refectory is their shared hearth. In the secular world, a meal is often a place of gossip and power plays. Here it is a liturgy. The reader concludes with the traditional phrase, "But thou, O Lord, have mercy upon us." "Thanks be to God," the monks respond. The meal ends as precisely as it began. The abbot strikes his mallet. The monks rise. They do not leave immediately. They gather the crumbs from their places, ensuring that nothing of God's bounty is wasted. The kitcheners will collect the scraps for the poor who wait at the abbey gates. Every resource is cycled, nothing is discarded. As they file out of the refectory, the atmosphere changes once again. The digestive pause is over. The bell for the afternoon labor, the non-noon, is about to ring. For many, this will be the time of the labora in its most literal sense, the physical toil of the fields, the mill, and the workshop. Anselm feels the weight of the pottage in his stomach, a steady anchor for the work ahead. He prepares his mind for the transition from the internal world of the refectory to the expansive, industrial world of the abbey's outer precincts. The sun is now at its zenith, and the heavy work of the day is calling. The heat of the midday sun has baked the stones of the courtyard, and the air shimmered with a dry, golden haze. Brother Anselm does not return to the cool shadows of the scriptorium. During the summer months, the rule requires a more vigorous application of labora to ensure the abbey's survival through the winter. He walks toward the outer precincts, passing through the great gate. Here, the monastery ceases to be a quiet sanctuary and reveals itself as a high-tech industrial hub. The sounds of the abbey change. The hushed chanting of the choir is replaced by the rhythmic clack-thud of the loom, the ringing of the blacksmith's hammer, and the deep groaning vibration of the watermill. Anselm makes his way toward the mill race, where a group of brothers is overseeing the repair of the great wooden wheel. In the 12th century, the Benedictines are the masters of water power. They have diverted the river with a series of sophisticated sluice gates and stone channels, harnessing the gravity of the valley to do the work of 100 men. The mill does not merely grind grain for bread. It powers the fulling hammers that beat the oils out of the abbey's wool. It provides the steady force needed to turn the sharpening stones in the tool shed. Anselm joins a team of monks carrying timber to the riverbank. The work is grueling. The heavy oak beams press into his shoulder, and the coarse wool of his habit, once a source of comfort in the cold night, now feels like a heavy burden. Sweat stings his eyes and tracks through the dust on his face. This is the labor of obedience. There is no distinction here between the scholar and the peasant. The monk who can speak 3 languages and copy the finest Greek manuscripts stands shoulder to shoulder with the brother who has spent his life tending the sheep. They work in a rhythmic communal silence. The only sounds are the grunts of exertion and the occasional sharp signal from the master of the works. Anselm focuses on the physical sensation of the labor. He feels the tension in his calves as he climbs the muddy bank. He feels the rough bark of the oak against his palms. In the monastery, manual labor is not seen as a curse or a distraction from spiritual life. It is an extension of it. To build a sturdy mill or to harvest a straight furrow is to participate in the ongoing creation of the world. It is a way to tame the wildness of nature and bring it into the service of the order. To his right, the abbey's blacksmith is at work. The forge glows with a fierce orange intensity. The smith is shaping a new coulter for the heavy-wheeled plow, a technological marvel that allows the monks to turn the thick, clay-heavy soils of northern Europe. Without this iron edge, the community would starve. Anselm watches the sparks fly as the hammer falls. The monastery is a center of metallurgical excellence. They refine their own ore, cast their own bells, and forge the very tools that allow them to be self-sufficient. They are not merely surviving, they are innovating. As the afternoon progresses, Anselm is reassigned to the orchards. The pace here is different. The air is cooler under the shade of the apple and pear trees. He carries a heavy wicker basket, moving from tree to tree to check the progress of the fruit. The abbey's agriculture is a science of observation. They keep records of which trees produce the best yield and which grafting techniques result in the sturdiest wood. They are the primary agricultural consultants for the surrounding region. Local lords often send their bailiffs to the abbey to learn how to improve their own estates. Anselm reaches up to prune a stray branch. He uses a small iron hook forged just an hour ago in the workshop he passed. He thinks about the interconnectedness of the abbey's life. The water that turns the mill also fills the fish ponds. The waste from the stables provides the fertilizer for the herb garden. The surplus wool from the sheep is sold at the local fair to buy the lapis lazuli for the scriptorium. It is a perfect closed economy driven not by the desire for personal profit, but by the desire for communal stability. The physical exhaustion begins to settle into a steady, manageable ache. Anselm's mind, stripped of its usual intellectual busyness, enters a state of quiet transparency. This is the goal of labora. When the body is occupied with a repetitive, honest task, the inner man is free to pray without distraction. He finds himself repeating a simple phrase in time with his footsteps, Deus in adjutorium meum intende. O God, come to my assistance. The prayer becomes the heartbeat of his work. The lifting of the timber, the pruning of the tree, and the carrying of the basket are all woven into the fabric of the liturgy. He looks toward the horizon. The sun has begun its long, slow descent toward the western hills. The shadows of the fruit trees stretch across the long grass, turning the orchard into a sanctuary of green and gold. In the distance he sees the brothers returning from the far fields. They move in a slow, tired line, their silhouettes dark against the brightening sky. They carry their hoes and scythes like ceremonial staffs. The great work of the day is nearly done. The earth has been tended, the grain has been ground, and the tools have been mended. Anselm sets down his basket and wipes his brow with the back of his hand. He feels a deep, visceral connection to the land beneath his feet. This valley was a swampy thicket before the monks arrived 70 years ago. Through decades of steady, disciplined labor, they have transformed it into a garden of order and plenty. They have imposed the rule of Saint Benedict upon the very soil. The bell for vespers begins to toll, its sound softened by the distance and the evening air. It is a different sound than the bell for the night office. It is a sound of homecoming. It marks the end of the labora, and the return to the Brother Anselm turns back toward the abbey gates. He walks with the heavy, satisfied gait of a man who has earned his rest. The industrial heart of the monastery begins to slow its beat. The fires in the forge are banked. The sluice gates of the mill are lowered. The world of work is closing its eyes, and the world of the great silence is preparing to breathe once more. The dormitory is a sea of rhythmic, muffled breathing. Brother Anselm reaches his pallet and stands before it for a moment, his head bowed. He does not undress. The rule of Saint Benedict specifies that monks should sleep in their habits, belted and ready, so that when the signal for prayer is given, they may rise without delay. This readiness is the final discipline of the day. It is a physical sign that even in sleep, a monk belongs to the order. He is a soldier of Christ on a permanent watch. He lies down on the straw mattress. The transition from standing to reclining brings a sudden, sharp awareness of his own exhaustion. The ache in his lower back from the scriptorium, the soreness in his shoulders from the mill, and the stiffness in his knees from the choir stalls all converge into a single heavy weight. It is not an unpleasant feeling. It is the sleep of the just. It is the fatigue that comes from a life where no energy is wasted on vanity or hollow pursuits. Every ounce of his strength today was spent on the work of God. He pulls the thin wool blanket up to his chin. The great silence is now absolute. It is a thick velvet curtain that has dropped over the abbey. In this silence, the boundaries of the individual monk begin to dissolve. Anselm is no longer a man with a name or a history. He is a part of the stone, a part of the shadows, and a part of the centuries-old lineage of the Conversio Morum, the conversion of manners. He has traded the chaotic freedom of the world for the liberating bondage of the rule. As he stares up into the dark rafters, he reflects on the choice he made 40 years ago. The secular world of 1150 is a place of noise and jagged edges. It is a world of me and mine, but here, within these walls, that world has been replaced by we and ours. The monastery is a preview of the celestial order. It is a place where time is not a line leading toward death, but a circle returning always to the beginning. Tomorrow at 2 a.m. the bell will ring again. He will rise in the dark. He will smell the beeswax and the stone dust. He will chant the same psalms he chanted today. There is a profound peace in this repetition. To the modern mind, a life of total predictability might seem like a prison, but for Anselm, it is the highest form of sanity. In a world defined by order, the soul is free to climb. He does not have to wonder what he will eat, what he will wear, or what his purpose is. These questions were answered centuries ago by a saint in Italy. Anselm is merely the current steward of that answer. He listens to the sounds of the night. A distant owl calls from the woods. The river, fueled by the spring rains, rushes over the mill weir with a low, constant growl. These sounds do not disturb the silence. They frame it. He feels the presence of his brothers in the darkness around him. They are all anchored to the same stone. They are all breathing the same air. They are a single body, resting before the next watch. Anselm's thoughts become slow and fluid. He sees the glow of the vermilion ink on the vellum. He feels the texture of the hyssop leaves in the infirmary garden. He hears the echo of the Salve Regina ringing in the vaults of the church. These are the textures of his salvation. He is a man who has found his center. He has found a way to live where the work of the hands and the prayer of the heart are the same thing. The monastery is more than a building. It is a philosophy made manifest in limestone and timber. It is an engine of culture, a pharmacy of the soul, and a fortress against the darkness of ignorance. As Anselm feels the first veils of sleep descending, he is struck by a sense of immense gratitude. He is a small, frail man, but he is part of something eternal. The books he wrote today will be read by men whose great-grandfathers are not yet born. The trees he pruned will bear fruit for a generation of monks he will never meet. He closes his eyes. The darkness of the dormitory is no longer a void. It is a sanctuary. He is a monk of the 12th century, a keeper of the light in a world of shadows. He has worked, he has prayed, and he has been silent. He has followed the rule to the best of his ability. He surrenders his consciousness to the Creator, trusting in the rhythm of the abbey to catch him when he wakes. The mists outside continue to rise, wrapping the abbey in a white protective shroud. The stars wheel slowly over the high towers of the church. Inside, 30 men sleep in their clothes, their hearts beating in time with the ancient stone. The day is complete. The work is done. Brother Anselm drifts into a dreamless rest, safe within the total beautiful order of the world he has chosen. The great silence holds him fast. Thank you for journeying through the mists of time with us tonight. As Brother Anselm finds his rest in the quiet order of the abbey, perhaps you too can find peace in the steady rhythm of the past. If you found comfort in this meditative exploration of medieval life, we invite you to experience a very different kind of rhythm on the high seas. For your next rest, listen to A Day in the Life of a Pirate, another immersive journey here on Sleepy Stories from Ages Past. From the creak of the mast to the salt-heavy winds of the Caribbean, it is a voyage into the rugged freedom of the golden age of sail. Until the bells toll again, sleep well and find your peace in the silence of the night. Good night.